Hello, and welcome to Destroy Before Listening, Episode 5, which is the conversation between myself, Pete Byrne, and Mike Vest, who's most famous for playing guitar in the band Bong since 2005, and most recently in Ozo. He's also played in Ramses, 11 Paranoias, Drunk in Hell, and Melting Hand. There's countless other things that he's been involved with, but it's basically a case of looking at Discogs if you want to know more about that sort of thing. Mike and I went to the same school together. He was 2 years below, and Lee Culver was 2 years ahead of me at that point. And I actually didn't know either when I was at school. It was only like 3 or 4 years later that I knew both. I first met Mike via Rob Woodcock, and then just more at the early Bong gigs and general like hanging out, you know. I love Mike. I've always got on well with him. It was great to get to speak to him. And the track at the end is by a band we did together in 2012 called Corpsefuckers, which was like a very brief punk band. Anyway, you should be able to get this on most platforms, so please subscribe and just share it about to anyone who might be interested. And there's also an Instagram account, and that's at Destroy Before Listening, where like relevant photos, pictures, flyers, whatever will be posted. So okay, thanks. 2020, I figured out it must be the 15-year anniversary of Bong.
Yes.
I know you couldn't quite remember if it was or not.
Well, I mean, who can?
I can. Well, Dean can, he thinks, anyway. But no, it's because there's a flyer I've got. It's the, it must be from
the one.
It must be the first or second Bong show. And it's 2005.
Yeah, that sounds about right. God, it's been that long. My God.
I know. No, just the what you think about like that. I don't know what you think about that now, and like if you could possibly.
No, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny like the idea of like the one band who was least likely to succeed in the history of bands. I mean, to be honest though, like it took us a while to get it together, to like work out what we had. You know, like it wasn't like straight away we knew, like, you know, like we did some records that weren't like, you know, we have done some records that we would agree on didn't really pan out as what we wanted. You know, like it took a while for people to get used to the idea. Like when we were recording albums, like early on and that, if we didn't record it, like Mienakunaru, Too Shy, you know, that one come out. Like it's hard to think back, like your head state, you know, because I didn't really know anything about music production really back then.
Yeah.
I mean, I did, but like, you know, being in a studio was like, oh my God, we're in a studio. You know?
Well, explaining to someone that you're just going to do, well, this is what we're going to do, and how do you record it then when someone's got no, I don't know, they just think you're weird. How do you like put forth your idea or your concept, because they must think like, fucking hell, I got a band coming in called Bong. Where do I begin with this?
So that took a while. Like, so what ended up happening was, especially on Mienakunaru, Too Shy. I mean, I listen to it now and it's good, like, but it's sort of like, it's always with hindsight. You always listen back to stuff and you kind of like, if I knew what I know now, this would sound like loads better. Yeah. But then that's not how it works, really. It's sort of like madness, isn't it? And just send yourself completely mad with it, you know. Yeah. But it turned into like but the thing is, what happened to that is, I remember, is a lot of concentration went into the zither that Ben was using, you know, the shy badge. So everything was sort of like mixed in that sort. So when it finally came to be, it sounded more like a prog rock band in a way rather than a heavy band.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like, we've basically made like a world music album. I mean, that's just for us, though. Like, you know, but it still gets considered one of our better records. Most people love that record, and that's been reissued the most out of all of them, and with varying degrees of whatever's.
Yeah.
And that's probably our biggest selling, to be honest. Which is banana. No, maybe not. Maybe Thought in Existence. I mean, I don't know really. So, but from what I can tell,
so people like the heavy prog.
But I mean, it's not that heavy though. Because I got carried away with tape delays.
Yeah.
Like to be honest, man, like it's so funny. Like we're better now in the studio. Like once I've finally got Mike to do something, and then we've got stuff going and that. It's like everyone's, after 15 years, you would have thought you'd be sort of in the zone. But back then, none of us really knew, what we could do, and so it was just like a case of messing around. Until we got it right. Like Mienakunaru, we'd only wrote the one song. The second song on the album, we wrote it in the studio, sort of.
Yeah.
So but with it being 15 years old, it's kind of mad. Like,
would it have taken? Would it have taken, say, 5 years into it to even get anywhere near to thinking probably. That you know what you're doing?
Well, it did. If you think about it, like we didn't really. Well, we were all like. Yeah, we didn't, like, it wasn't really, I mean, it's just a different world now with music. Like, it's changed so much over the past 20 years, like the way things go on in 15, 10 years, even 5 years.
Yeah.
So, like, back then it was just like, you just, like, it was just like, you didn't know, go and play London for like a tenner, have a great time and that. Just be like, what? I wouldn't even dream of doing that now.
Not like guarantees now. Well, I was going to ask you about the promoter side of things and how you've seen the that end of things change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just booking agents now. That's a problem. It's like, it seems to be that if you want to play gigs, you have to have a booking agent.
Okay.
Like, and the booking agents are pretty much only interested in something that's already big. I mean, it's not exactly like new information. It's not like, guess what's changed in music? It's exactly the same. I just feel it's infested the underground with this.
Yeah.
Like, certain independent labels have got bigger and they sort of forgot where they come from in a way, or just decided to leave that behind. And now everything's quite corporate. Like if you see like festivals, like, like psych festivals and 100% DIY and all that. And you're like, well, why is it exactly the same lineup across the board with all these festivals? It's because they use the same booking agent. I mean, I can understand if you're a promoter, like, to be honest, imagine you've been promoted for 10 years, right? And you're absolutely sick of bands. I can give you 6 months worth of bands from the same label. And like, they're quite hip at the minute. Do you want to put them on?
Yeah.
If you were like a promoter, you'd probably be like, well, yeah, I don't really need to do anything. The booker sorts out all the nonsense. You've just got to put the gig on, really, generally, and do the promotion and that. So you can understand, but it just cripples everyone that doesn't have one. Like if you're in a band that doesn't fit into a genre, like if you're not like a rock band inspired by techno, or like, like a psych band it sounds exactly like Mogwai or something, then you're not really going to get a look in. I mean, I've tried, like, I'm not going to lie to you. It's not like I'm sat on my ivy, I'm not, sat in my tower passing judgment. I've tried to get bookers and stuff like that and stuff, and it's just not really worked out.
Have you ever been approached by booking agency or like management or anything like that? Okay.
No. I mean, not really. I mean, sometimes I've been told to get in touch rather than so, and then I'll get in touch and then they'll be like, can you send me all this stuff? I send them all this stuff, and then apparently they're our booker, and then they don't book any gigs, and then they get annoyed because I book gigs. And I'm like, but you're not booking any gigs. You know what I mean? Just after a while, you're like, this is just a bit.
To you, it wouldn't make a difference, or not something you would ever seek out from this point?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of hard to work it out, really. I think it would make a difference massively, because like I've been booking everything of all the bands really, and I get well sick of it. And we can really kill your taste to make any music, like, because it's so unmusical. It's unbelievable. Like, you know, just trying to be like, can I play a gig? They're like, nah, and you're like, great. Can we play a gig maybe down the line at anything? They're like, yeah, I'll get back in touch with you. They never get back in touch, and you're like, great. And then you just go through the motions, really. And I mean, you have to understand that a lot of my bands and that of all the things aren't exactly that marketable. Like, that's what you notice the most of. Like, if you want to list like bands that get a lot of the bills, it's because they're sort of like, they have something more like on the image front of things rather than actually sounding like a good band. You know, like whenever I see like Bong promo shoots, I always laugh. Because it's like, even like when we get like nice pictures done, we still just look. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. How do you think?
Imagery's everything.
Right.
It's part of the branding and that. Isn't it?
How is it now then? If you know, people come expecting you to be, you know, like long hair and beards, wizards, you know, and then like you singer and stuff. Dave now is just like. Weird. No beard, no hair. You know, it's like it's a totally different image now.
To be fair, though, I don't think it's really mattered that much. It's not like we've lost. It's not like we've lost.
That's good.
Fans.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And to be honest, if we had lost fans, I'd be probably glad to get shot of them.
Yeah.
Because like people like don't really need them. Like, doesn't sound they really know anything about music. So they're worrying about what a band looks like.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it's about, though. You know, like that's why bands spend so much on photos. Like I could never understand it, and then over the years, I started to realise that like it's more in the presentation of a band that kind of makes it work. I mean, obviously the music's got to be good in a way. It might not be to my taste. I wouldn't say it was shit, but just sort of like when you hear in a band, like a rock band, and then they sort of like, oh, we decided to use sort of like the idea of techno to inspire our mixes. I was like, why didn't you just say you wanted to be played on the radio? Why are you wasting everyone's time? Like talking this rubbish. So it's just a preference, really. But I think it's visual, you know, like a lot of stuff, you know, like I've seen some bands that look mint, but just sound, but just boring to us. Well, it's not shit. I mean, they can play, but it's just boring to me, you know.
Yeah.
Like really cliched almost, where you're like, oh, anyway, but that's just a preference, though, isn't it? You know what I mean? But it's imagery.
Yeah.
You know, it's a relation to the consumer. So, like, you know, we live in a world now where people, sort of like think the first Melvin's album came out 4 years ago or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's weird talking to people like this new generation. It's because everything's right in front. So you've never had it come out and get it, you know, like it's all just on YouTube and that. I mean, it's hard to understand in a way, like, but that's how they consume it.
It's context. So, I've thought about this before because you can listen at this point, you can listen to all music before this point, but if you're only like if at a much younger age, then there's a different...
It must be overwhelming in a way.
I'd imagine so. It's harder to pick out what you're going to go for. But I mean, I guess there's always kids who are going to like gravitate towards certain things. But it's hard to compare. It's hard to compare with speakers.
It's weird.
People I've spoken to already and things, and just
people my age as well. Like you know, like I'm 38. I was talking to this lad who was like 35. In Newcastle and that, and he was talking to me about music and that, and I was like, "How old are you?" And he says, "Oh, I'm 35." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, just like he just felt like he was in his 20s. That's all. Like I don't know, just the way he talked about it, like the way that he was. You know, it's like, "Oh, have you ever heard this band called Yob?" and that, and I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What? That's what you're so excited about, is it?" Like, I mean, fucking hell, like, really. I don't know.
It's
a
like,
good band though.
Yeah. I mean,
I just meant from like an idea of like, this is what you're excited to tell me about, a band that like like, I know what their past 3 albums are, and I've not actually heard them. Like, you know, you see the name, I don't know, just a different, I don't know. I respect his excitement, I suppose. It's probably just being older now, and you just kind of like...
Being old, yeah. I mean, I know, I think...
Maybe I miss the excitement of hearing new things.
Yeah, well, here's the I think we talked about before. It's like the initial kind of heavy music, that you were exposed to and got into, and you were into. Well, that was pretty well.
Good times, man. Good times. Good tunes.
That was it was kind of like a test. That was the test. I mean, because it
was
me.
Oven. I never forget that. I've still got that 7-inch, Pete, man.
Yeah.
Like it's blazing, that one track.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Oh, that 7-inch.
That's 7-inch, man. It's lost as well. Nobody. I mean, they did release something. Buzz Up, and again, they did an anthology or something.
Yeah.
But like that 7-inch, like I bet nobody. I remember talking to someone about that. I was like, "Oh, I really like Buzz Oven." I was like, "Yeah, that 7-inch." Nah, it's like great.
You just want to like put your windows through listening to that track. It's just
it's so heavy, so heavy.
Just pissed off.
Just great sound.
But that stuff, the sludge. You've got the sludge. Like, I suppose what is sludge music now, which is
just basically metal.
It's kind of people. A lot of people screaming over stuff, but then doom seems to be more like people singing over stuff these days. So I don't know
well, I mean, you know, you've got like trad. I always laugh when I talk about doom music. Like, I always did. I just thought it was all a joke, really. But the thing was, is like, you know. But the thing is, like, I think like what. Like if I think rightly, what I used to love in like sort of sludge punk or whatever was sort of like the licks and that, because like if I remember rightly, Iron Monkey used to be great songwriters in those sort of bands and that, and they used to write, and same with like I Hate God to a degree. After like their first album that come out, and there was the second one that come out, In the Name of Suffering or something.
Yeah, they
had like all these they were just like well written. Almost like punky songs slowed down, but they had like licks in it. They were like sort of like tunes, right?
Yeah.
And I think
they had the grooves. What I mean? They had the grooves. Yeah, same as 16 as well as another band.
Yeah, like pretty much.
Like earlier 16s.
So that's what I remember, was sort of like they just had those like crushing grooves. And now when I hear sludge now, it feels like it's just like metal slowed down. You know what I mean?
With
like it just with screaming.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. And then everyone says they sound like Burning Witch, but none of them do.
Yeah, nah.
None. I've not. Have you ever heard a band that actually sounds like Burning Witch? I've never actually heard. Ever?
No, I mean,
who could you relate them to? Like who are Burning Witch? Like who do they sound like? I couldn't place another band. To be honest, though, I think a lot of stuff to do with Bong was from like krautrock generally. For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, because at the time, right, I remember just starting to get into like less metal and stuff. So I was starting to get into like Ashra and Khan and all that sort of stuff. And then it was like the Sleep Nose. It was like sort of sleep really. But then after that, after I started thinking about it, instead of going like being actually like writing riffs, and then I started to get into loads of drone and that back then, and then jazz finger gigs and that stuff like that. I think anyway, if I think back, I mean, I can't actually pinpoint exactly what happened, but that's sort of how we went in that other direction and that, rather than being like writing sleep songs. I remember we tried to write songs that actually had like proper riffs in them and that, and it always sounded rubbish. It did. It just didn't sound right. Like, you know, I mean, we've done a lot of stuff back in the day which didn't sound very good. Like, I mean, it's not like it came like right away. Like, you know, it took a while for Mike to come out of his shell as well. We're playing as well. I mean, if you think about how long ago it was, like I was what, in my early 20s?
Yeah.
Dave was like 40. Poor Dave. Nah, he was like 30 at the time, wasn't he?
I didn't really see that one coming, you know, where you were like, it's like, all right, Mike and Dave, you know, going to do a band, and I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, whatever.
I just didn't think it just seemed
Nobody did.
Unlikely.
We didn't.
Unlikely that you would be kind of, you know,
playing to like 3,000 people at a festival in Holland.
Yeah.
You're like, what? You're like, what?
Yeah. That was
Pete Ride doing backup guitars, playing the wrong song.
Yeah.
Hilarious, man.
Or like Mike hasn't showed up, so you have to get Rob in on drums.
But he was good. Nice, great.
We're back to Roadburn as well. As like, how did you end up doing that stuff? And they kind of
they got in touch.
Relationship with.
They got in touch.
Yeah.
Like they got in touch totally out of the blue. Like, and I've no idea how it happened. Like, really, he was just out of the blue. Sent me, I can't remember. He just sent me an email or something, just saying would Bong like to play the next Roadburn festival. I didn't even know what Roadburn was, sort of thing at the time. But I didn't, because it like at that point, man, you gotta remember, like I wasn't like, you know, we used to listen to all that sort of stuff like when we were younger, really. Like, so like by the time it got to like the time when Bong started playing like big gigs, I would have been like in my late 20s by then.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'd already...
Different vibe.
You know, like, I like Spirit Caravan. Do I listen to them every day? No. Like, you know, like, it's like, you know, so it's a whole different vibe and that. So like when they got in touch, I didn't know who they were. I mean, it's kind of funny actually, because when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, we'll go. And they were saying, we'll cover all your travel and give you all. This is the first time really where I was like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And then they sent me like how much they were going to pay with, right? But because at the time, I mean, this is like maybe 10 years ago now, maybe less. Mm-hmm. But I was quite green at the time. So when I got it, I thought that was the bill that they charged us to go over and play.
Here, play.
Can you even imagine it? Like, because I thought like, this is daft. Yeah. You know, it was like $1,000 or something. Well, and I was like, you know.
This is probably because you, in the time that you weren't paying attention, you didn't realise the kind of how big things were getting or how big things had got for kind of that style of music. You know, you just and then you're exposed to it and you think, fucking hell, I could have never imagined the kind of.
It's weird. That is a weird feeling, like, because you're not going to know in Newcastle. It's only when you go away that you notice that sort of stuff. Yeah. Like when we started playing in London a bit more. And then, like, we played, like, one gig somewhere, and it was, like, you know, it was, like, over a couple of hundred people or something, and then we were like, we should be getting more money.
Yeah. Like, not just, like, 20 quid, 30 quid.
Well, I mean, we did for ages, though.
Oh, no.
It still kept going on, you know, like, people talk about punk rock and that, and it's like, it's not a lot of it down there, especially with that sort of stuff, like, you know, you have to say, really, like, but with the Roadburns and that, it was crazy, like. And I don't know how we got to play there like 3 times, not in a row, like, but every other year. Like, they did us a lot of favours, actually, like, really nice. And they didn't have to, actually. You know, hats off to them, really, like.
Well, they released the live records, didn't they?
They did that box set. Like, they come out with all the live gigs on it.
That's pretty full on, isn't it, really?
Well, to be honest, they do a lot of, they release like most of the gigs sort of thing. And and also the way I sort of like, I made it easy for them in a way, because I think when you're doing a box set with most bands, I think they try to make it as special as possible. And like, you know, like with pullouts and these bits and stuff. And I said, look, just make it like really easy for you, because we're like a minimal band anyway, right? Just have it so it's a Bong logo, and then inside you have the pictures of the artworks that are screen printed on each bit, and that's it, really. There's not really much else to talk about. Yeah. You know, like, so I try to make it as easy as possible for them, really, as well. Like, just to say, like, you know, like, not be like, because I mean, you see some of the box sets come out and you're like, God, that looks like a lot of work. Like,
Yeah.
You know, and everything's like pre-printed and they're really expensive. And generally, like if you release a box set on the label, it's kind of like a death, really, unless you're releasing like something that's gonna go like. So, but I think it did all right actually. Like, so, but I think because it was done in a three, because I wanted to release each of them separately, and I just thought, you might as well, because they already released one of them. The first one we did that got released on a record. And then I was like, well, we might as well just release them all. Like, it just seems like a shame to have them. So you might as well do like a box set or something.
Yeah.
And to be honest, he was up for it. I mean, it took a while to do, like, you know, it took him like 2 years after we thought about it for it to actually start to become a thing. Like, you know? I mean, put it this way, like, even if Bong sold like 1 million copies, I think most labels would still be like, well, get on to Bong. Yeah, like we're not exactly pulling in the diamonds.
Yeah.
You know,
so,
anyway.
Well, you
compared to like a Yard box set, or like you know, if Voivod wanted to release something, you know, so, I mean, like, which I can totally understand.
People get it and buy it. Yeah.
Pretty much, like
Bong.
You know, and they're like, oh, I need to get that new Bong record. Like, I think Bong records generally, when they come out, people will buy them straight away, but they're a pretty slow burn, like Bong records. Like they will sell out eventually, but like, and it's not like we get a lot of press either, really. There's still people don't know what they're talking about. Like when they're like, oh, Bong sounds like a metal band, but it's not. And I'm like, oh my God, 15 years later, and people still have no idea. They could just try something else. Try something else. You know, just, I don't know. It just seems like
Stoner. Stoner band. Stoner Rock. Yeah. You had the Stoner Rock album, didn't you?
The what? Stoner Rock.
Stoner Rock. Yeah. What was the thought? What was the idea behind that title? What was the idea? What was the concept? I can imagine. Maybe.
Oh, there's a concept. Like, there's definitely a concept.
Continue. What is it?
Right. Well, basically, it's like, well, basically because of like when the idea of like Stoner Rock would be like, by that point it'd been like quite tight bands, I suppose. Do you know what I mean?
Caius Grooves.
Well, I mean, Caius are totally mint anyway. But
I love Caius.
Yeah, class man. The record's a mint, man. But it was more just along the lines of like trying to set like there's so many Stoner Rock bands that are garbage, to the point where you're like, I can't believe these bands they're still coming out today. Like I seen a band called like Wizard Truck or something the other day, and I was like, are you joking me?
It's like Bong Wizard or like Wizard Goblin or Bong. It's all like a set of like words in that. You get like a band name generator and a sound generator. But it's just sort of like those galloping riffs and that, and just all that sort of stuff, and that you just like instantly like, so it was more just along the lines of like making the most droned out record possible of so much little variation in that. It's basically one song, isn't it?
It's 2 songs technically.
But they're both the same.
More or less. I mean, you could argue, like, I mean, Polaris, the main song on it, like, we still play that at gigs. That's class, like, it's the one with the huge gaps in it and that. The problem is with Stoner Rock record, right? The problem is with that, which is a shame, is that, like, the mix and the mastering's not great on it. Yeah. Like, that record's really quiet.
I think if I was recording Bong, I'd just throw up, like, room mics.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's not just that, though. It's just like how you manage each of the tracks as well, and like what you bring out in order to define it. You know what I mean? Because it is all quite subtle, like. Yeah. So if you're doing EQing on stuff, you really got to be careful what you do. And
If your dynamics get lost if you just kind of like flattening everything and.
Well, that's exactly what happened. So that's kind of what happened with Stoner Rock. Like, if you listen to the record, it's so quiet, like so quiet, and like that's the. I mean, it wasn't particularly that fun to record. Like, because it was just like a headache with everyone in there.
Yeah.
But because it was like 5 people in the band at that point, like it's like stupid, and nobody was really that interested. Like they weren't like, you know, even the engineer. Like,
well, that's a
big problem.
It's not a good start. It's not a good start for a record.
No, it's a big problem. Like if the engineer's not interested.
So you talk about recording Bong, and then how does that compare with? Because you joined, it would have been guitarist in 11 Paranoias, but you played a bit in Ramses before that.
I did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that was like, yeah. So I was already doing 11 Paranoias actually, sort of, and then I got the Ramesses were going away to do a tour, and I think they're standing guitarists, because they've had a few guitarists and stuff like fill in for Tim over the years, and like they just said, "Do I want to do it?" and that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, great." And then I was like, "Oh, these songs are hard," like, you know. Yeah. So that took me a while to get that. Like, took me like 2 weeks of pretty much solidly practicing. I never practiced so hard in my life. Like, because I don't really, you know. So like that was like, but that sort of like improved things a bit with my playing anyway. Definitely helped us sort of learn how to bridge stuff like a lot. Like, because they had like these, like they weren't exactly like difficult songs, but for some reason they were quite hard to play for me. I think it's just because I'd spent most of the time just playing whatever I wanted. Yeah. You know, like it had got to that point, like really. And then after that tour, that's when we recorded those 2 EPs with 11 Paranoias. That's really good recording in that band, like, because everyone's just like really good musicians. Like Adam's been playing bass for like years and years. He knows sound production really well. Mm-hmm. He works at that XL label in London and that, and he's always around sort of like people doing production. And so, you know, and he's got access to loads of nice toys and that. And then
just as a side bit, it just reminded us, did you like meet Adele or something at one point?
Did I meet Adele?
Yeah, I was smoking a joint.
No. Who said that?
No, I'm sure something Dean says. No, never mind. Yeah, sorry.
I think I probably made a joke about it. Like, I've not met her, but I have been down there. I've done some work there. I've just taken out trash in that petty cash. I have.
It's good. It's good enough.
I love it. Yeah, I'll tell you what, petty cash at XL is all right, man. Yeah. Where it's like a multi-million-dollar. You know, they signed like Dizzy Rascal and White Stripes and Prodigy. They've got like all the gold discs in the toilet. So when you're having a piss, you can see Outer Space by Prodigy. You know, like platinum. That's what built it. That's what built it, though. They've got a Gucci. They've got a Gucci bathroom. But it looks. It's true. But the thing is, as well, when you go in, though, it is like an independent label still. Like if you walk into it, it looks like. You remember when you used to like you would go and practice at practice spaces in Newcastle and the garage, and it would be like there'd be random posters everywhere and sort of like.
Oh God, yeah, that was
Well, it's kind of like that. Like, I mean, it's nice, you know, they've got like nice stuff, but the way that it's built, it gives that impression. I mean, everywhere's like open plan and everyone's got nice stuff in that, but it is sort of like, it's like not a big place. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, the last time I was down, I had a big Keith Flint, like, picture on the building. Oh, it was quite because he killed himself, didn't he?
Yeah.
Pretty tragic, that, like. Mm. So like, they had a big thing for him and that was wild. I'm trying to think of anyone that I've met when I've been there. I've met like, no, because like obviously some people I don't know because it's like new people. You know what I mean? Like brand new people that have come out on XL. There's one guy who's got like kind of ginger curly hair or something. He's quite like a big singer-songwriter. Can't remember his name now.
Ed Sheeran?
No, nothing. No, because I would know that, wouldn't you?
I think you probably would. Maybe
you'd be like, bloody hell, you know. I don't think he's very nice, so he didn't seem very nice, bro. Right. But like, I don't know, just the impression you get off something. Like.
Yeah.
But like, so I don't know. Anyway, most of the time when I was down there, I mean, I've met like Adele's manager and stuff.
It's good enough.
And he was quite a wide boy, like. He was like a heavy Cockney in that.
Mm-hmm.
He was intense, like kind of scared us a bit. He was just like, all right, mate, and he grabbed us and like sort of just was like give us a handshake, and then he pulled my arm off, and but this is like a multi-million-dollar fella, though, isn't it? So it's like when I'll be leaving Adam and we're like having a laugh on the way back, and I go and get pizza, and then he's saying like that guy's worth like 140 million. And I'm just like, why are you telling me this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go back and sleep on a couch, play a gig in London tomorrow for like 300 nigga. Yeah. But he'd be like, but sort of stuff like that used to spin us out. But they were all really nice down there. I think I met that guy. I mildly met that Russell guy. Was he called Richard Russell? The guy that did the David Albarn album. He was the guy that discovered Prodigy. I forget his name now. Well, anyway, I met him mildly once, I think. And
we're getting off topic somewhat. Yeah.
It's just daft, isn't it? Just daft. But with them Paranoias, we're recording, right? Like it's always mint because, like, we can use stuff like, and Adam's just like he's been around so much different types of music, even though he's only into like sort of like the heavy stuff generally.
Yeah.
Like and Nathan, who replaced Mark, our wizard.
Yeah, because you said you played initially. You played with that lineup, and it was interesting what you were saying about his drums as well, his cymbals.
Right, he had like Mark has like 40-inch ride cymbals that he uses as crash cymbals. He's like a what would you call it? Like a tree surgeon of a drummer.
Tree surgeon of a drummer.
He used to punch some of these sticks, and he used to have like the thickest sticks you could buy. Yeah, he was mint. I mean, totally different drummer than Nathan, like, but Mark, we didn't play any of the gigs from Mark with Paranoias, so I played gigs with Mark when I was in Ramesses, so I did feel the full power. I think I had tetanus for like a week or 2 weeks after, just from his cymbals, really, like. And I had like these massive scars up my side where I'd been getting grazed by the edge of his crash and stuff. So like after we'd finished them, and I had these sort of like, they looked like stretch marks, right? And I was like, what am I getting stretch marks for? And then I looked closer, and it was actually like cuts and stuff. And Adam was like, and Adam's got the same on his side. He's got like scars. Like.
Yeah, it wasn't actually off from the cymbals. It was just the sound waves coming off them that were.
I don't know about that. Like, there was times when you would get a shave, like, and you would feel it like afterwards, and you would see the scratches and that. I mean, Adam's got them on his side. Like, I think he's permanently scarred from some of them.
Yeah.
Like, but he's just covered in tattoos, so it's hard to tell, I suppose. But like, but then Mark left because he rejoined Wizard, didn't he? So like he got the offer in, but we hadn't done any gigs anyway with them Paranoias, so we just started out, and we'd done those 2 EPs with them, and we recorded them. You know that band, The Horrors? Remember them?
Vaguely.
Terrible, but like they were really nice, so they let us use their practice space. So we recorded those 2 EPs in there, which was what were they called again? Oh man, Super Unnatural and Spectral Bestiaries.
Right.
And them two were recorded on the same day, sort of thing. So realistically, with them Paranoias, I only really had a couple of practices with Mark, and we'd recorded when we did it. So that was the extent of that. So I never really. It would have been nice actually to like do a proper album with Mark, just to cement it in there, because I was like, I can't believe I'm in a band with Mark Green. Like, I was just looking at him, just going, I used to listen to your records ages. And he'd be like, which ones? And he'd be like, I don't remember them. And I'd be like, you know what, right? But he was kind of nuts. Like, he was kind of crazy, him, because I think he had like a metal bar in his body from like coming off his motorbike and all sorts of stuff and that. So when I met him, he was kind of destroyed a bit, like, I'm not going to lie. But you wouldn't notice that he's drumming.
Yeah.
It was just sort of like in between them, and then he would drink like loads, and he was dead funny, Mark, or like he was class. But if you tried to you know, like ask him about like, oh, you remember this back in the day? He just he couldn't remember.
Yeah.
And I kind of believe him, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't just like he was saying that because he didn't want to talk about it.
Well, if it's
like,
a bike accident, you know, people get fucked up, don't they?
But it's not just that. It's just, you know, like they used to say on the records that he was always concussion. Like I remember laughing about that all the time because every time it used to be a description of Mark Green's kind of drumming style, it would just be like a concussion. And like afterwards playing with Ramesses at some shows and that, I did feel concussed. Like
you probably concussed yourself being at that playing like that. It was
just completely crushed my head.
Killing yourself on the drums and that.
Yeah. So like, you know, after we'd played in that, when we were sat in the back in that, Adam would just be lying on the floor and that, just being like class. And I'd be, in my ears would be ringing and it would feel like I was concussed, like it was totally disorientated and that.
Yeah.
No, but he's a good lad, Mark. Like he got a lot of stick as well because he'd obviously like he played a lot of gigs and he did have a problem with the booze like and stuff. And he sort of like tried to curb it a lot. And I think when he went back to Wizard, and I think he had a bit of a hard time with that actually because I don't think they were really that nice to him. Like I think they really ripped him off for like publishing and all this sort of stuff and just used him for that record. But then also Mark sort of like. He kind of, when Electric Wizard started playing live gigs with him and that, I think he was doing well for like the whole of it really, and then he played like a couple of big shows with them and really dropped some bad stuff, like couldn't play the start of Return Trip and stuff, or just something I remember him saying where like he sort of like he kind of messed it up for himself, like he got too excited and got like really drunk before he played and messed it up. And
okay.
You know, like, was it just, you know, they're massive now, they're like the biggest band in the world. So, like, it's kind of like if you're doing that at a big metal show last of the thing, people are going to start talking. And it was kind of like a big thing for him to come back in that because that was the ideal lineup, really, in a way. You know, like Mark and the singer guitarist and Tim, but he wasn't in the band, like, but it was just like, it was that little bit closer, you know. And Mark is an amazing drummer. You kind of take that away from him. Like, on those records, like the way he's pacing and just like the way that he was hit the drums and that, it's very distinctive. But like, you know, I think a lot of people have tried to mimic him really, but can't. I think it's just what's built into him. But he is like Keith Moon, like for real. Like, you know, like that's like what he's like as a person. As a person, like he scared me at times. Like he was just like I was like, wow, you really are like living like a rock star. And so, I'd just be like, I just want some herbal tea and a sit down.
Yeah. So 11 Paranoias was more of a together, less kind of crazy
to start with
thing. Yeah, just to start with. All right.
Well, because then it's sort of like, because then Mark left and then we had some gigs sorted. We were supposed to be playing a festival in Oxford or something mental. I mean, it's a long time ago now. And then we got Nathan in, and Nathan has been in bands like Labrat, and he was in like loads of punk bands, and he played in like Capricorns. You remember them? Like a band with like Dean Berry or whatever.
Yeah, I remember vaguely. Remember that band as well.
And he was in like Labrat, a band who were like a Kerrang favourite for a while. I remember
them on Terrorizer compilations.
Yeah, that's right.
There was that band.
And he's just been in like so many bands, man. And he's like an amazing drummer. But he's mostly like a thrash drummer, really, and a hardcore punk drummer and metal drummer, you know what I mean? So he's like, and he's highly skilled, like. So we've been sort of like we started trying to slow him down and that. And it took like an album to do it, really. Like we started writing stuff for him and he was quite up-tempo, really, but then he sunk into it and that. And he was a good fit, actually, Nate, because he used to be a booking agent as well. Like he was a tour manager for like Wizard and a few other people and stuff. So he was like, he was just like, you know, he was just up for it, like. He was like pretty organised fella. So then we started doing albums and that was it, really, like. And I used to spend a lot of time in London going down really and playing, because we 11 Paranoias were doing quite a few gigs, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Aye. And then Nathan joined the band. But in the studio with them, it's great though, because like everyone's just so accomplished with what they're doing that you don't really have to worry about it. Like, you know, like you just kind of like, you know, you play your bit, you play it together. You know, you do this, you do some solos here and there, and whatever sort of you do, they always jump on in that. And they're just really responsive as well in the studio. I know this sounds like kind of like just how you should be, but based on how I've been in the past with recording albums, it'll always be like, feel as if I'm the one sort of being like, oh, we should try that. Whereas in all my other bands I do, it's always a case of like, oh, I'll do that if you're doing this and that. It just keeps you going. It's nothing worse than feeling like tired from other people's tiredness in the studio, because that can really mess things up. You all need to be working full licks until the day is finished, really, and be into it and be excited about it. And that
I mean,
keeps me going. Yeah, but you'd be surprised how many people aren't. Just how many people don't want to be there, and you're like, I swear to God, if I could play drums, I would do everything in my band.
Well, good drummers is always like the eternal
hard to find.
The eternal problem. It's like it's impossible, you know. And then they all 9 times out of 10 are just like, there's something different about people who play the drums. I think, like mentally, the way they're made up, it's kind of different people. You've just described one like 2 minutes ago, you know. And, I suppose that's a good. It's a good measure of how
things can be totally different.
Different people can be,
but it's the same with like Melton Hand as well when we go in and record. Like Melton Hand's a lot more improvised than like Paranoias. I mean, we do have improvised parts, but generally like Melton Hand's a lot more improvised. And it's the same with them. They're just up for it. Tom, the drummer, who's in Gum Takes Tooth, and that, he's a great drummer. He's like he's almost like a metronome. He's like Graham and that. Yeah. He's just like on it all the time, but he sways a lot. Tom's like, you know, he's used to like experimental stuff, so he's not so wedged in there. He sort of like can flex with songs and that. You know, so like Melton Hand and that. Like it's a shame because I love doing that band probably the most out of all of them. I think, like, just because it's every gig we've played, it's always been organised. Everyone has a laugh. Nobody's grumbling about this, that, and the other. Everyone gets a good sound because they know their stuff. And like, it's the same with Paranoias and that. It's just sort of like, you know, you turn up to do a gig and all you got to worry about is setting up your stuff and plugging in. I mean, I guess I just don't realise that that's what most people have been in bands to a degree have probably only experienced that. And they've not experienced being in bands with like complete tools. So you're like, when you're there and it's like, oh yeah, I'm all set up, and you're like, really? And they're like, well, yeah. And you're like, no, of course. Like,
I couldn't be arsed though enough to get pissed and the high instead. Couldn't be bothered.
You know what I mean? So like that means everything to me, really. I'd rather play in bands like that with people, even if they couldn't play anything, really, to be honest. Just because it's just better. You know.
You mentioned Graham Thompson, which is the latest collaboration or collaborative efforts.
Top stuff.
I couldn't. Well, it's just to explain how you do it or the processes, because it's a modern, you know, modern age band, really.
That's all remote.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, I've been doing like remote albums for the past 2 years, actually. Like I did another album like last year where I did it all remotely. The last Melton Hand record I did, that's where I just sent in the guitars to get mixed from my house and stuff. So, but with the Ozo thing anyway, I'll tell you. Go on, what are you saying?
Just Oblivion Reptile, that's what I had done.
Oh, yeah.
That was your...
yeah.
What's
it called? What was it called again? Oblivion.
Can you remember the band name of the album?
I'll try. It was I remember the name of the album. It was called Fried on Rock.
Yeah.
It's like a play on a reptile in the desert, getting fried out on a rock, and that pretty fucking profound. But it was Oblivion Reptilian. I think that's what it was. It's either that or Reptilian Oblivion. I forget now.
It was only last year, man, or whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, but it was like, but that was a problem name in that. It was a problem name in that band actually, because I used to get that confused over like which one was which, like whether it was Reptilian Oblivion or Oblivion Reptilian and that. So it took me a while to decide. I was like, no, it's going to be Oblivion Reptilian. It's hilarious.
Okay.
Spent like a week writing it down on paper, going, does that look right? That looks right. That looks right. But that was done remotely.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So the guy lived in Australia, and he was in a band called Koza, and we did a split with him, a blown out. And I got talking to him, and just said, I was like, you want to send me some drum tracks and that I could write an album. And I think he had like a studio in his house. So he just said, all right. And then he sent them, he sent the drum tracks and that, and then I just started putting bass on them and that. And then and then once I'd done that, I sent the mixes back, and then he replayed his drums, you know what I mean, just to tighten it up a bit.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And then I just started adding guitars, sort of mixing it that way, really just back and forward. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it sounds really hard, right? But it depends on like, it all depends on like how good the musician is. Like, for instance, right, the reason why Ozo works really well like this, right, is because Graham is a genius, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, he can write a song in his head from start to finish by staring at a wall.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand how people can do this. And the fact that he plays bass and guitar better than me.
He plays all instruments better than everyone in the band can play the instruments.
It must do his head in. Because he's just sat there going, I could play that better. Because I've started to taste out with a bit of Graham, like where he's sort of like, sometimes I'm wondering if he's like, because that ball peen record that come out, on Cruel Nature or whatever. It's just mind blown. Like, and I'm just like, I wonder what he really thinks of Ozo. Does he just think like?
Well, he did it. He's done it. Yeah.
But I mean, but it's to do with like the style of musician. Like, for instance, if the drummer can write a song, that'll help a lot. Because like really with Ozo, it starts with a drum track. Yeah. And then I just play along to the drum track, and then we just add the sax as it goes.
So he just sends you the drum tracks, and you just wail.
And then I'll just record the bass lines over the drums, and then send bounces to Carl, and then get him to record sax in his house, in his bathroom and that. And then he'll just send that back down. I mean, the thing is, with Graham, like, he's not just a good musician, though. He's a great mixer and master and all this sort of stuff. So it's like he's just, and also he's a control freak as well. So that
it's always good to have someone who's a control freak in a band, I think.
Well, because I am as well, but I'm kind of loose with it. Like, I'm a control freak with like getting stuff done. Like, if someone says, "Oh, can you put some guitar on here?" and blah blah blah, I'll do it in a couple of days. I won't wait a month and then send you something that's half-assed. I'll be like, I'll get it to you pretty quick and that, and I'll do exactly what you're saying. That. So, and to agree with, I mean, it's hard to tell really. I do have a certain standard, like to be in a band with. Like, if you're a gig and that, I'm like, get on the merch and that, let's get this money, la la la, like get cracking, like this and this bloke's this bloke. So, like, in a way, I'm kind of a control freak in that way, where I'm always sort of like trying to push forward what we're doing or working on another album when the first album's getting pressed up, and then I'm always like, oh, for the next one, this will be good. But with Graham and that, he's sort of like, he likes things sounding, like how he wants them to sound. And to be honest, if I'm in a band with someone and someone goes, I want to do the mix, I'm like, oh, get in. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because normally it's like me. If I'm doing like another project or something outside of like Melt the Hand or Lemon Paranoias or something, generally if I'm working with people, it is normally like sort of like, oh, well, I'll just do it, like, because nobody else seems to be bothered.
Yeah.
So, but with Graham and that, he was like, I respect his drive and that. Yeah. Although, like, I think he was quite surprised because we're going to work on the next one now, and he's kind of like, bloody hell. And I'm kind of like, well, you know, I don't want to, you know, like for me, it's not that bad. You're the one that's got to go in and do all the drum, you know, like, so I can just be like, let's do another one. And for me, it just means that, oh, well, I've got to like set up the bass thing again. It's not exactly that hard. And then, you know, just work on and write songs and that, which I like doing anyway. But with him, it's like a bit more than that. So I think he was a bit like, I think we'll wait till like October to go in and do stuff and that.
So
which is fine. So,
well, just to...
I'm surprised. I mean, I am surprised you went for it though, because it is like sort of like really experimental. And if you look at it, the bass lines and stuff that I play are quite simple, really. You know, I kept it all quite harmonic so that it was easy for Carl to improvise his sax leads over it. Like, for instance, if I'm going to be writing direct riffs, right, like on the bass line with loads of changes or something and loads of things, it's going to be hard for Carl to sort of improvise, because generally the best way to improvise is over a solid few notes, right? Like, so, you know, like Khan did and all that sort of stuff, they just stuck on the same beat for a while, and that helps people improvise over the top of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. If you're sort of like sporadically playing, or you're playing like quite a tight bass line with drums and lots of changes and odd chord changes or whatever, like, you know, it's like, it's hard for someone probably like Carl to be able to play over the top. And I wanted sort of like the sax to be sort of like the main thing. You know, like I wanted it to be like the sax was creating all the melody rather than the guitars and the bass and stuff, just because that's what I normally do. Like all my records are just drenched in guitars all the time, which is fine. But, you know, everyone likes a change from now and again. And I thought it would suit things with Graham as well, because he's into, you know, like he's like, he looks at music probably like in the same way, where he's thinking about space and headroom and stuff. So I sort of like brought everything way back on doing these albums. Like he was the one that told us to play guitar on the record. I wasn't going to. I was just going to play bass, and that was it. And he was like, no, I think you should put some guitar on. And I was like, yeah, right. So it was like, you know, so, you know what I'm talking about now. Yeah.
Well, this leads into you just solo stuff, I suppose. You know, got the bands and everything, but then just you, and like why you continue the focus on that and doing the projects and like doing Bong still, and like what keeps you, I don't know, motivated, active, like to try and...
We just got to. Like, if I don't, I just sort of get depressed if I don't work on stuff. I felt that for a long time, where it's just like, if I'm not making something, I just feel as if I'm like wasting my time or something. Like, right. I don't know, it's hard to explain really. Like, I just feel better when I'm making stuff, you know, and just like making music and that. And like, and also it's sort of like just, I don't know, I couldn't explain it really. Some people say I'm prolific, right? But I know loads more people that are way more prolific than me and better. And I just feel sometimes that like when it's, and it can be a problem actually, because once you become so prolific and that, people don't really know where to start with your music and just move on, because it's the way people digest music now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're not like, people have like the concentration of like a fly, you know what I mean? So it's like, unless it hits hard straight away, then, you know, most people are listening to music on YouTube now, so they'll only be listening to like one song off an album, which is probably a single.
Yeah.
So really, like the idea of having an album as a concept and that is kind of drowned out, and all my albums are conceptually based to a degree. I don't think you'd be able to pull out a single in my back catalogue.
Yeah.
You know, whereas that's sort of like how people are like inclined now to listen to albums, I suppose. So, but with making stuff, it's just how I've always done it, really. Like, I just would have thought after like about 10 years of doing it, I might have had a few more opportunities, but I'm still sort of like, you know, I'd like to be honest, I want to do more collaborations with people, because now what's going on is it's like you can't get any gigs, obviously, and things are really bad and you can't go out and that. And
yeah.
What I want to be doing is I want to be doing collaborations with people, because with like-minded people that work remotely,